Well, hello there, folks. You are again in the right time and place because it is Tuesday night. And now that the Imposter Kings inaugural tournament 2020 has reached its conclusion, all hail the true king of Imposter Kings, Mr. Rogers. Now it's time to get back into our regular Tuesday night tilt between yours truly, your humble broadcaster Dan Koch, and the inventor of this game, as well as my co-broadcaster Sina Yagane. Sina and I are going to play some Imposter Kings, but tonight, as you'll see on your screen, is a special night. It's not just any night of Sina and I playing Imposter Kings for your fun and amusement, and our fun and amusement too. It is new player tutorial stream night. So for any of you who have tuned in over the last couple of weeks and said, hey, this here game looks pretty fun, but I have no idea what's going on, I really wish someone would just explain it to me in depth. Tonight is the night for you, because we are going to go through things in depth, everything that you can possibly enjoy. So what that means, let me go ahead and pop the two of us on the screen, is that Sina and I are going to teach you right now, sitting there at home or in your bunker, how to play Imposter Kings. Sina, are you hyped for this?
So hype.
So very, very hype. Hype out of his mind. Actually, one thing I'm curious about, I've been waiting for my special emoji to get approved by Twitch. I'm not sure if it is yet. Doesn't look like it has been. But if you need help getting hype, I can't think of any way to get hyper than that hype right there. Actually, hyper is a word. I was using that as if it weren't a word, but it absolutely is a word. How do you like that?
I don't have it.
Tragic.
I do have Sizshen's. For some reason, I have his emotes.
I think you were. I think we might have been gifted that at some point. But
well, I have to be on his stream, right? Like gifted from him, or does gifting for you give me the?
I think it allows you to use those emotes anywhere.
Oh.
Pretty wild. I think you also have to be a subscriber too.
Okay. Wow.
Which means pony up, buddy. No, I'm just kidding. That's all right. Anywho, I can see folks coming on. Hi. Hello. You are here. It is Tuesday night. It is time to learn how to play the Imposter Kings. And this is fun. Again, we, over the course of the last 2 weeks, got to see some real pro player moves. You know, again, the Professional League of Imposter Kings, it's high stakes. People are trying to put bread on their table through all of this. And, you know, things tend to move fast. Unless Dancing Firehouse is playing, then they don't. And I knew I'd get some hype out of you there, Sina, with that comment. Yeah, so tonight we're going to take it slow, but we're going to go through how this here game is played. And even if you aren't newbie at Imposter Kings, even if you are Mr. Rogers himself, the true king of Imposter Kings, you're going to enjoy tonight too, because after we're through the tutorial on how to play, it's going to go right into a normal tilt between Sina and yours truly. We're going to play the 7, and frankly, having watched all of that play, but not having actually played the game myself in the last several weeks, I feel like I'm way behind the curve. How do you feel, Sina?
I don't know. We'll see.
All right, that's what I like to see. Okay, so let's go ahead and, as I was doing for these tournament games, let's first walk through a basic overview on how to play Imposter Kings, and then we're going to jump into Tabletop Simulator Stadium to actually do the drill down in terms of how this all works and behaves. So let's go and jump into the stadium, or not the stadium. Let's jump into the how to play, shall we? Got to get value out of that stinger. So how do you play Imposter Kings? We'll go over the basics here, but then we'll go over the details once we actually jump into the game itself. So again, as you may have saw, players take turns playing a card from their hand onto the throne. The objective is to be the last player able to play a card. Cards can only be played on cards of equal or lesser value, unless they have a special ability that allows them to get played on the current top card. So here's an example card right here. There's the Elder, no less pissed at us than she was back when the tournament was happening. 2 of the 18 cards of the Elder here, and there's a bunch of stuff going on in this card. Actually, instead of just glossing over that bunch of stuff, I'm going to talk about all of it. So, of course, looking at it, again, the big thing is that big number 3 in the top left corner that indicates that the Elder can be played on cards of 3 or less. at the very bottom is some flavor text. That's right. This game has a lot of lore. Sina has written I believe a 7-novel series about the Kingdom of Nerseti, and you get just little dollops of it there at the bottom of the card. That lore that says, for example, this elder, kingdom politics are beneath them unless necessary. And the lore ties into the ability of the card. So note this card has 2 special abilities. One is it's immune to the king's hand, and that'll make sense when we talk about what the king's hand does. And the second thing is you may play this card on any royalty card. So in that deck, there are 2 royalty cards. They are both 9s, big honkin' 9s. And the Humble Elder, a mere 3, can be played on top of them. That's its special ability. It's one of the few cards that can be played on top of royalty, and that's why this card has value despite its low number. So there are 18 cards in the deck. We're going to go through all 18 of them tonight. Each player is dealt 8. The remaining 2 are burned. One is burned face up, meaning both players know that the other player does not have it. And one is burned face down, which means both players do not know that the other player does not have it. So again, remember the math there. It's the same 18 cards every time. Each player gets 8, then one gets burned face up. So that means that each player knows where 9 of the cards are. They know the 8 that's in their own hand, and they know the one that's burned face up. Now, the other player has 8 cards. So of the 9 that are unaccounted for at that point, the player knows that their opponent has 8 of them. So that means that there's a 89% chance for any card that's not in your hand after the deal, it's in your opponent's hand. So that one face-down card really causes a lot of mayhem in terms of how players play. And again, the whole idea is to get information. You're trying to get information out of everything. Each player also starts with a face-up king card. Prior to each hand, each player burns 1 card face down, selects 1 card as their successor card to place face down next to their king, which means it's not in their hand, but it is accessible to them if they use their king. Speaking of the king, this is the king right here. The king is given to both players at the start of each hand, and it can be used once per hand. And using it does 2 things. It disgraces the current card on the throne, and that successor card that was set aside at the beginning of the hand can then be pulled into the player's hand to use. So pretty interesting thing the king does. It's sort of your get out of jail free card for whatever card you have to play on, because it will flip it and relieve you of the pressure of playing on it. And it also gives you access to your successor card. So a very powerful thing that you'll want to use at exactly the right time. Now, disgracing card means it flips. It has no value. It's a value of 1. It has no special properties. It goes from something to nothing. Here's another sample card here, the Inquisitor. 2 of the 18 cards of the Inquisitor. It's a big 4. It's glowering. He's mean. He's got nails put into his staff there. He's a real jerk, the Inquisitor. And part of how he's a jerk is that he can treat your opponent harshly. See that special ability? You may say a card name. Other players of that card in their hand must play 1 to their antechamber. Antechamber cards must be played next turn regardless of whether it would otherwise be a valid play. Meaning, when you play an Inquisitor, you can guess a card that's in your opponent's hand, and if they have it, they have to play it. So again, it's a way of dictating what they do next. It's also a way of getting information about their hand. It's a way of setting up your own strategy by playing your opponent's hand for them. So even though Inquisitors are only 4s, that can mean a lot. And then a couple of cards. We're going to go through all 18 cards tonight, but here we've got the Fool and the Assassin. There on the left, the Fool is but a humble 1, but if you play it, you get to pull any card that's face up on the table into your hand. So again, in a game that only has 18 cards, where every turn is pivotal, getting a card back can easily win you a hand. And on the right-hand side, there's Stabatha, the Assassin, number 2. Again, just the 2. So not much use to play, but if your opponent plays their king and you got the Assassin in your hand, you can play Stabatha right away. That's what reaction means. And boom, they're dead. Unless they have a king's hand, which we'll talk about in a second. So it's a way of instantly winning. A couple of other things, and we'll talk about the part, but so much of Imposter Kings is not just about winning a hand. It's about maximizing your wins and minimizing your losses, because not every hand is going to be a great hand for you. The cards will sometimes be against you. So a lot of it is trying to minimize your losses to try to get an advantage. Games are to 7 points. The scoring per hand, you get a point for winning, a point for the opponent still having a card stuck in their hand when you do win, and you get a point for not using your king over the course of the hand. So 3 big points if you play it right. And then finally, as part of each match, each player gets one free mulligan where at the start of the hand, before the first card is played, they can just say, hold it, terminate the hand, and force a complete redeal. But you want to be careful when you use it, because once you've used it, any subsequent mulligan is going to cost you 2 points. So you're only going to want to use it if it's a dire situation or you're confident you're going to get your butt kicked. So that's how you play Imposter Kings. Let me jump on back to Cena here. We're going to get a good look at his chest. Hi, Cena. I can't hear you, man. I think you're muted on Discord.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I'm actually just trying to get the stadium ready so I can show off all these cards. So that's why you got a shot at my chest right there. I have 2 computers making one work overtime so I can get some nice artwork ready for you folks. And yeah, I love the overview. So
see, I'm curious. Where's the other? It seems like you've got like one monitor. Are you using your TV as a monitor?
No, I have a laptop which has a camera, and that's what I'm using. That's why I'm looking up, is that there's another computer behind this one.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yeah. It's all good, though. I mean, we're making good progress here with this little color chart that I'm making, so I'm pretty excited to show you all.
Ooh, color chart. It's gonna be fantastic. I like the sound of it.
Don't hype too much.
Shouldn't I hype the heck out of this?
Yeah, you should.
I am hype. I'm beyond hype. So, folks, again, if you saw this and you thought, I really would learn how to play this, we're going to dig into this in a second. It is a really fun game. I think we're all maybe suffering a bit of a tournament hangover because that tournament was so intense that might be a bit slow tonight. I also haven't slept very much this week. Sienna, I'm not sure about you. Have you caught up on your sleep after all that tournament action?
Yeah, it was pretty exhausting. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, that tournament was really fun. It just was a lot. Doing a whole week of the tournament play, it was really exciting to see the different variety of cards that people are using. I'm excited to talk about all the different cards, including the 3 and 4 player cards, and what their strategies really are. So, hoping that this is something that we can record, put up on the channel, and be able to kind of help people understand the intricate game that we like to call the Imposter King. So
sweet. All right. Well, as you're getting that set up, did you invite me to Imposter King Stadium?
Oh, I sure did.
Aha. And by the way, folks, we're saying Imposter King Stadium. What we're actually talking about is Tabletop Simulator. So, of course, we can't play in real life because we're not maniacs. There's stuff going on. So instead, what we use in lieu of being there in person is Tabletop Simulator by our friends at Berserk Games. And so Cena has put together a special plugin for Tabletop Simulator, which has all of the cards of Imposter Kings, so we can play digitally, courtesy of Tabletop Simulator. So everything you see right now, you can do yourself if you own a copy of Tabletop Simulator, which includes play against us, play against others, download the card pack, and have a good old time with the game. So that's right. That's what this is all about. Let me go ahead and Ranjam on over to accept your invite. And let me pop the splash screen up here. And are you sure? There it is. Okay.
How dare you?
How
dare you not assume that I didn't invite you?
I know. This is when my CPU starts going berserk here.
Berserk? Like Berserk Games?
Yeah, I think that's why they call it Berserk Games, is because it makes your computer berserk, trying to keep up with its rendering of... Oh, wow, look at that. Ah, it's beautiful. All right. Let me go ahead and resize my screen appropriately. And... all right, we are going to watch some action here. All right, we are in the game. This is, again, just as if we had taken the deck of the cards and wheeled everything else out. And see, and I noticed there's a ominous black card in the top left. Is that special in some way?
No, I think that means that you have to turn off mad caching.
Of course.
So Dan's actually going to show you a little something special here, where if you go into your options and uncheck mod caching, it reloads all the art. So let's go ahead and do that.
Okay.
And then I'll kick you out.
Yep, gave me the old booterino.
Get out of here.
Oh, say, let me just Well, fortunately, I think it. All right. Well, I got kicked,
You
folks.
could check in the you could check in the main menu. So
All right. I've been invited. So here we go. We're going to go configuration, mod caching off. And let's go ahead and let me shift tab into Steam. Let's play some more of this tabletop simulator thing here. And it's going to go ahead and connect me back in. All right. It's going to take a moment. Let me go. Hey, Dot Sam. Hey, Johnny Go. Great to see you tonight. We're just going to wait for some cards to phase in their art. It's funny, after letting you drive in Imposter King Stadium all this time, I'm going to have to get my tabletop simulator muscles back.
So what happens here is that by turning off mod caching in your options in Tabletop Simulator, when you join the game, it tries to load the newest art, and all of the art is in one file, so it takes a little bit of time near the end, 40 megabyte download. If you turn on mod caching, you don't have to deal with this after you load it, but you won't get any of the new artwork. So here's what's going to happen is in a second here, Dan's going to be able to see all the artwork, and then we can actually systematically go through each card, its uses, what game mode it's in, etc. When you actually load up the game, so there we go. Looks like Dan's got all the art there. When you actually load up the game from the workshop, which is a link that you can find, it's going to look something like this. And, uh-oh, I forgot that you still had mod caching. You might want to turn mod caching off now, or on now, because I'm about to, bust it a couple times. So, when you join at the first time, you have the 2-player deck, 3-player deck, 4-player deck already kind of sectioned out. You have cheat sheets that are both two-sided. So on the back side, you have all the instructions for how to set up each round on each of these cards. And you can give one to each player if you'd like. And these will automatically update once you subscribe, which is kind of cool. You want to hover over the text box over here on the left and hit delete all 3D text, and it'll get rid of the text, delete the cards you don't need, and there we go, we're playing 2-player. But for now, let's go through every single one of the cards here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to reload my save state here, and you should see all the cards here. All right, Dan, which way do you want to go? You want to go from...
We're going to go left to right. We're going to start with the 2-player cards first, and then talk about what the 3- and 4-player cards have in store. So, again, as I mentioned, in the 2-player version of the game, there are 18 cards. And I'm just going to call them out, and then we'll go through them by one. But in the 2-player version of the game, you've got 1 Fool, 1 Assassin, 2 Elders, move them up to the top, 2 Inquisitors, 2 Soldiers, 1 Judge, 2 Oathbounds, a Mystic, a Warlord, a King's Hand, a Sentry, a Princess, and a Queen. And that's, of course, leaving the King aside. So those are, on the top, the 18 cards that are in the deck in any 2-player game of Imposter Kings. So let's go through them each one by one and talk about their strengths and weaknesses, and then we'll go ahead and play a demo hand with all that magic in there. Then we'll talk about the other cards and the other versions of the game. So here we go, starting with this humble card here, the Fool. So we mentioned at the beginning, the Fool is one of the specialty cards, so-called, which is, because it has a very special power but doesn't have much value as a regular card played on the pile. Again, that pile at the center, you can only play on it with a higher number than what's out there. The Fool only being a 1 means it can only be played if the current top card is disgraced, which only happens in special circumstances, so it needs a lot of help to ever get out. But notice that text. You may choose any other card from the court that is not disgraced, then put the chosen card into your hand. So that means a Fool going out means a card coming in, and that has a lot of advantages to it. One is, again, you get to reclaim a card, including a very powerful one, into your hand, which you can beat your opponent on the rest of the night, and you likely win the hand with it. It also means you're now up a card on your opponent in terms of what's in your hand, because you played a card and then put a card right back into your hand. So you went a whole turn without spending a card, which can mean a lot.
No other card lets you do that. So the Fool is unique in the fact that it gives you card advantage, as Dan was saying. Every time you play a card, you normally have to exchange a card or do something else with it, but you never gain cards. This is the only card in the game that allows you to gain a card. And that's what makes it really powerful, but that's also why it's so hard to play.
That's right. And so stepping up now to the next specialty card, again, the one that we talk about in normal tutorial, it's the Assassin. And again, the Assassin's very hard to play on its own. It's just the 2. So given that it's only a 2 and has no special ability to be played outside of being a 2, as just a regular card to play in the pile, it has very little value. But note that text. Reaction. If another player flips their king, you may show this card from your hand to cause them to lose this round. If successful, prevent their king's power and play this card to your antechamber. So that last sentence is really only meaningful for the 3 and 4 player games. The real upshot is it's a reaction, meaning you can play it immediately. It doesn't have to be your turn. And right, they flip their king, you play this card because it's in your hand, you win. Obviously incredibly powerful, and a lot of the game revolves around handling or using the Assassin.
That's right. I like, so as Dan was saying, if you make the other player lose, then you usually win in 2-player. However, with 3 and 4-player, there's a little bit more to it. The Assassin's really powerful is more of a deterrent than anything, because if your opponent doesn't have it in their hand, you likely have it in your hand, and then they're scared to flip their king. So they have to deal with it somehow, and that's where the bluffing comes into play. Do you put it down as your successor? Do you throw it away at the beginning of the round, or do you keep it in your hand and hope they don't pull it out? And we'll talk about what pulling it out means in just a second, because the number 4 has that very special ability. But before we get there, let's go to the next card, which I believe is the Elder.
And right you are. So there is the Elder, and we talked about the Elder as part of the setup. So again, the Elder is just the 3. Oh, we're missing a card. We need 1 Zealot. Here a second. That's another 3, but we'll talk about that in a second. But that's right. So again, the Elder is only a 3. So, you know, as we can see, there aren't that many cards that are 3 or less in the deck. Of the 18, only 5 are actually 3 or less. The other Elder, the Zealot, the Assassin, and the Fool. So unless something's been disgraced, the Elder can be pretty hard to come out and play. So you might think it's not that valuable of a card, but that ability to play on royalty cards is incredibly important, because these are the 2 royalty cards over here, the highest cards, the 9s. So this is really your kind of get out of jail free card if someone, hey, Will, our champion, Mr. Rogers, now online. Great to see you. Right, so the Elder might not seem useful, but it's the get out of jail free card if one of those big 9s hits the table, so you can actually survive it.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say. They are very versatile, and not versatile when it comes to just play, but they're very powerful when going up against an Elder. Sorry, royalty. Their necessity to kind of restart the game, if you suspect that your opponent has royalty cards in their hand, they help you navigate through that. There's another card in the game that is more powerful if royalty are still on the court, and the Elder is the only way to actually keep them on the court, except by playing another royalty card. And so it's there's a lot of tactical considerations. The game is quite dynamic. Having an Elder in your hand is really valuable if you think that they have the royalty. Otherwise, it's just the 3, and 3s are not very powerful in this game.
That's right. And what I also love is between the art, notice that for each card that has a pair, so the 2 Elders in the deck, the art and the text are slightly different for the 2 of them. So if you do a mouse hover like this, you can kind of get a flip book style thing of her, in this case, maybe even glaring at you nervously or disapprovingly. It's up to your interpretation. Right, those 2 Elders are in play. So there's one other 3 that's in the deck, and it's this spooky looking chump right here. And so Cena, I've been doing all the gabbing about these cards. I'll let you, since I know the Zealot's one of your favorites. I'm actually just kidding. I know you don't like the Zealot as a card. But I'll let you take this one.
I love all of my cards here, Dan. Don't worry. The Zealot is an attempt to still have the same. If you notice, all the numbers have the same theme. So the Elder is anti-royalty. It's one of the lower cards that can beat the highest card. The Zealot's kind of the opposite. It is, you can play it on any card except for the royalty card once your king is flipped. There's 2 reasons why this is important. One, you have to flip your king, which encourages, I can play the Zealot, but I have to flip my king before it has its power. So that's like a prerequisite. Like if you don't think you're going to be able to flip your king, or if you are getting squeezed before you're even able to play it, then that's kind of unfortunate. But it does make itself a natural successor card, which is the card that you put face down in front of you at the beginning of the round, which when you flip your king, you get this card, and that makes sense because now its power is activated. However, the reason why the Zealot's so interesting is that it's another survival card, and it's a survival card that allows you to play on any card except for the royalty, and your opponent, if they know you have the Zealot, can counter it with royalty if they were keeping the royalty. So as a pair, the Elder and the Zealot are quite good. The Zealot, lore-wise, is a fanatic for the royalty. That's why he'll never go against another royalty, and will only come to power when one of the kings, is flipped. So if your king, the one that he's trying to support, is flipped, he'll come out in droves and start protesting like crazy. And who knows what he's going to do with that branch with fire, honestly. I don't want to know. Element-wise, design-wise, I love talking about the cards. I'm just going to say he has a lot of similarities to the king. So if you actually look at one of the king cards, which I actually don't have out right now, let me see if I can fix that real fast. This one's actually the king's Zealot. So there's a bunch of kings. Boop. So I will delete all but the 2 kings. If you notice, there's a little bit of a dot pattern behind the king and the true king. If you look at the Zealot, he's got that dot pattern as well. Also, the insignia on his chest that he kind of handcrafted because he's a crazy person is the same insignia that the king has. So this is the king's Zealot. If you look at the other Zealots, which you'll use in 3 and 4 player versions of the game, it's the exact same portrait with different flavor text, but he's got instead a little brooch that you'll see in a future card, which is the queen. So the queen has the stylistic of like those leaves as part of her bouquet, and so this Zealot is also a fan of the royalty, but specifically the queen. And you could kind of tell that he kind of handcrafted it at his home to be insane, but whatever. The attention to detail here is kind of my favorite part. As Dan was saying, there's different parts of each of the cards when you have alternates. So
Right. I never noticed that kind of polka dot background, the fact that it is shared with the king. What I love is it kind of makes him look like he's emerging from the night sky a little bit. It just makes him that much spookier.
yeah, the king has that because of the duality of whether he's imposter or real. And so it's the same thing with the Zealot. He's backing someone who potentially could be an imposter or the real king. He doesn't know. He doesn't care. He's just a fanatic. So
That's right. And we'll talk about the whole true king versus king distinction here in a second. It's a pretty important part of the meta game of Imposter Kings. So, okay. Again, breaking it down. So we talked about the 2 specialty cards, our Fool and our Assassin. And then we talked about the 3s, which are all survival cards. So they don't put a lot of pressure on your opponent, but they do a great job at surviving against your opponent's strongest plays. Let's now talk about these bad boys here, the 4s, the Inquisitors, and how they set up a hand. Seeing I know these cards are close to your heart in a non-facetious way, so take us through the Inquisitor here a little bit.
yeah, let's start with the gameplay first. So in 2-player, the Inquisitor, you say a card name, and it says other players with that card must play one to their antechamber. In 2-player, what that means is if you name a card in your opponent's hand, they basically have to play it no matter what next turn. And they get the ability, but it's a great way to pull out an Elder or even the Assassin. So they're preemptive ways to stop the Assassin. They're essentially in 3 and 4-player, it's similar. You still can pull out cards that people don't necessarily want to play at that time. And that's what makes them great. They let you set up your own tempo. A bonus is that if you actually pull a card from their hand that is 1 through 3, or actually 2 and 3, then you get to play another Inquisitor or another card that's higher than that value, and you can ensure that you can essentially. So you pull the Assassin, they play a 2, you can play 2 or higher at that point. So it's pretty important to manage your Inquisitors properly.
That's right.
Art-wise, oh, go ahead.
Oh, and the other important thing is not only do you get to force your opponent's hand in terms of what they play next, you also explicitly get to know what they have or don't have in their hand at that moment. So again, so much of this game is about information. It's about resolving that tension around what your opponent likely has and turning it into knowing what they actually do have. And again, the Inquisitor, along with the 5s, has that ability to check on that.
Yep, and that's right. The whole point here is that it gives you information, but it also lets you pull and change the way that their opponent's trying to, utilize their plan. If you pull a card that they're planning to use later, then that throws a whole wrench into their plans.
That's right. So
Artistic wise, the Inquisitor, as you can tell from the text, they live to point their fingers, but rarely do they point their fingers in the right direction. They're actually the king's personal guard, essentially, or unofficial guard. You can see that they're using essentially a stick. One of them has been using it quite a lot and has nails through it, as well as like you can see cracks in the wood. The other is a newbie, I would say. You can see his fanatical devotion to the king as well. If you look at the top of his hat, there's four kings there, and it's actually supposed to be the crown, kind of a foreshadow of what's going on. You can see the shadow actually covering up one of those kings. I mean, it's a lot of detail on these different cards. Also, he may look like he's just a standard brutalizer, but if you actually look under his cloak, he's got armor. So you know that this is something that he's been preparing for. He likes to incite violence, and he essentially forces people to come before the court, even if it's not their turn.
interesting. You know, I never noticed the crown thing, but now you mention it, it's a kind of very powerful thing on his toque. Uh, you know, I don't know why I didn't think that that was armor. For some reason, I thought he was just wearing like a loud sweater.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be pretty subtle because, if you look at him and you'd be like, oh, this is just a common citizen, but then you realize if he has armor, wait, hold on, why does he have armor, right? Like, and that's the whole thing is that they pretend to be just like part of the people, but they're in reality seasoned trained fighters.
Got it. So those are our two Inquisitors. Again, as we mentioned, those are two of the 18. So now we advance on to the fives. And the fives are all information cards. So cards that give you
That
information.
they, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, so yeah, cards that give you information about what's in your opponent's hand and special abilities if you guess right. So we'll start here
Uh,
with. Sorry, go ahead, Zena.
I'm sorry. I mean, so essentially, that's exactly right. They benefit you if you guess correctly, but also they're just like the Inquisitor. They give you information about who has what.
So let's take a look here at two of those fives. That would be the soldier here, who again comes in scarred and unscarred form. And the ability of the soldier, so you can guess a card that's in your opponent's hand. If they do have at least one of those cards, then the soldier goes from a 5 to a 7 after it's played. So even though it always plays as a 5, to the next player playing, they have to treat it as if it were a 7. And there's also one very important ability, which is if you guess right, you can disgrace any three other cards that are already out on the table. And that can be very important for things like the Fool, because a disgraced card can't be fetched with the Fool. It can't be fetched with one of the other cards that are able to pull cards that are already on the table off of it.
Yep, that's right. There's two parts to this ability, and it's all contingent on whether you guess correctly. You can usually guess correctly what's in your opponent's hand, and so it's kind of a two. You can use it as a two different ways. One is you can confirm that something's in a player's hand, and if you're right, you get a benefit. If you're not, that's okay. Or if you want to guarantee that it has a value of 7, you can just guess something that you know is in your opponent's hand. And with knowing you basically almost at the beginning of the game can guess most of the cards in your opponent's hand, and so there's usually safe bets that you can make. So it's really up to you whether you want to guess something that you know in order to get the ability, or if you want to guess to see if they actually have it in their hand. In 3 and 4 player, just to mention, this says any opponents. So you actually are hitting every single one of your opponents with this. And so it's much likelier that you'll actually hit the ability, but then you'll get to know who has it in their hand. And that's what makes it really interesting.
That's right. So a lot of information can be fetched in the 3 and 4 player game thanks to the soldier. And let's talk about that art, because I always love the forlorn look on his face, and things just get worse for him from the plucky young soldier here to the one who's been through some shit, so to speak.
Ooh, language PG-13. Just kidding. That is PG-13. Okay, so the soldier is. I guess you can kind of express it. Actually, the Imposter King wife came up with this quote for him after I told her what the background was, which is they owe him their lives but hate the lives he's given. They're actually referring to the king here, and so the thing that's interesting about this world is that you don't die from natural causes. And so soldiers tend to be people who are in the lower dregs of society who have been forced into fighting for on behalf of the king. Before the current king ascended to his throne, they had to fight each other continuously in something they call the quenching, which is a Colosseum-like fight. And if you survive it, you get that scar branded on your face. So that's why one of the soldiers has that scar on his face, is because he survived one of those duels. And losing the duels have more consequences than death. And so it is something that you would want to win, essentially. With the new king, they love him a lot more because they, as they said, they owe him their lives, but they are still forced into fighting eternally until they die in combat, and that's a really tough prospect for them. And that's the reason why they keep looking forward, is because they don't have anything to live for, and it's kind of depressing. And so you can kind of tell that from their looks, is that they are doing the things that they have to do with their families and things that they do care about on the line. And so things get better for them in the story, I promise. But for right now, this is where they're at.
Got it. The quenching. I had never heard that. I'm only up to book 3 of the 7 novel series, so that's pretty intense. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun for these blokes as they battle things out in their pickle haubs and all the rest. Um,
Yep.
but interesting. Yeah, I love it. So there's the 2 soldiers. Again, those are 2 of the 18. And now let's take a look at the other 5, which is this. Oh, that's interesting. Usually we play with the eyes forward version. But that's right. This rather trenchant looking character right here, the judge, looking sharp indeed, both figuratively and literally. So
That's right.
the judge is a 5. Her hat goes over a number, and the ability here is you can guess a card in your opponent's hand, and if you're right, you can play any card to your antechamber besides the Fool to play next turn, regardless of what your opponent does. So again, a very powerful after effect for guessing right.
That's right. The judge is, I would say, probably the highest skill cap card, in my opinion. We see people in the tournament using it to great success, like in the grand finals. Dancing Pharaohs used it against Mr. Rogers quite a lot, in the right way. And it can also be really disastrous, because what happens is when you play a card to your antechamber, your opponent gets to see it. So you get kind of the duality of, well, this is good. This gives me information about an opponent. This is one opponent's hand, not multiple, like the soldier. But if you get it right, you may play something to your antechamber. You don't have to. So you can use it just for a fact-finding mission. But the thing that's really great about the placing stuff into your antechamber, well, if they only have 7s and 8s, and you dump like you dump like a 3, like an elder, then they have to play their card, which is like a 7 or 8, and then you can play the 3 right on top of that, because cards that come out of your antechamber basically get played for free. They don't have a value. And so it really leaves them behind. It's really frustrating because they have to play on something that's 5 or higher and then get countered by something so little. You also can dump your assassin. So let's say your opponent already flipped their king, and you still have the assassin in your hand and you can't use it. It ends up in your hand somehow. Maybe it was your successor card. You can use this card to guess something correctly in your opponent's hand, and then just have the assassin as your card in your antechamber, dump it for free, get rid of it, and it's no longer a stain on your hand.
That's right. So it's a great way of dumping cards you can't use. It's a great way of teeing up cards you fear you won't be able to play if you let your opponent dictate the next time. And it's a great way to get your opponent to waste the value of a card, knowing that you can play something low value on top of what they do. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting edges to the use of the judge. It's for the pro players, so to speak. And it was interesting to see how it was used at the tournament. Any interesting lore behind the judge, Cena?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say the downside is if someone and your opponents have like a king flip opportunity, they could flip pretty easily with no repercussions. There's a couple of things that can counter this, and that's the reason why it's so high skill cap. Or, for example, if they have like a mystic and they can use its ability, normally when you use like a higher level card, you have to flip it and make it a value of 1, letting you play anything on it. If you have something in your antechamber, they can basically do it for free because you're committed to your next play. In terms of the lore, basically my artist was like, I want her to have sunglasses like Chinese judges did in the 10th century. And actually the world doesn't have the technology for sunglasses, but she wants to remain impartial. She's one of those people who fights for what she thinks is right. And the way the lore works is that if you guess something correctly in an opponent's hand, that means that the person you put in your antechamber actually had a good lead of some sort, and therefore she convinces people to listen to them. And so that's basically her lore behind the card is, if correct, you can play a card to your antechamber. That means that that person guessed something correctly or had evidence against one of the imposter kings, and they are now able to go talk to the court without any. It doesn't matter who talked before them. They're up on deck. They're in the antechamber to talk next.
I was always curious about how the gameplay tied in with the lore, and that, of course, makes a ton of sense. One thing I appreciate about the judge is she comes with her own green screen. So if she's on a Zoom call, it's really easy for her to, put whatever she wants to in the background.
That's right. She is. That's the textured background right there. So.
Sweet. All right. So those are the fives. And again, the fives are all about information, about getting information out of your opponent's hand and unlocking abilities for guessing right. So now let's talk about the sixes. The two sixes in the 18 card deck are the Oathbounds, who come in Hear No Evil and See No Evil form in the two-player game. And the Oathbounds are, again, one of the, I'd say, signature cards of Imposter Kings because of their unique ability. So the way the Oathbound works is if there's a card on the throne that's higher than a 6, you can still play the Oathbound on top of it, which disgraces that card, but forces you to play another card on top of the Oathbound subsequently that is immune to the king's hand. So basically, if there's a card that's higher than 6 that's out on the table, you can still play the Oathbound on top of it and play any other card in your hand as a result of that, so that you get to do what you want to do. But there are drawbacks that come with that as well. So, Sina, you want to take us through that?
Yeah, so if you play this on a higher value card and you play another card, clearly you're playing 2 cards out of your hand, which the drawback there is that you're going to run out of cards faster and therefore lose the game. So you have to be really careful about when to use the Oathbound. However, you can use it on a higher value card. So it's one of those get out of jail free cards, with the added part where you have to play an additional card. Of course, that means that it naturally combos with another card. If you actually go to the right Oathbound here, it says they can convince an entire court to listen to a vagrant. Well, that vagrant happens to be the Fool down here, and so the Fool, the actual art of the Fool, or the original art of the Fool, it says this former beggar's connections are nothing to joke about. So they actually talk about each other in their flavor text here. And naturally speaking, if you play the Oathbound and then you play the Fool, you'll be picking up a card, and that means that you go back to net 0. So you get the ability to pick up any card that you want from the court, and it's just in your hand. And it's like you played one card to get another card. So that's a pretty cool connection. It's one of the few ways you could play the Fool as well, and it's a really powerful combo to the fact that most people will actually try to get rid of your Oathbounds in order to prevent the Fool from being comboed into it.
That's right. So Oathbound, a pivotal card, can change again the fate of hands, and combos well with many cards, but especially the Fool. And we'll talk about that King's Hand ability in a second. So those are the sixes. Now, Sina, I'm sure you've got some lore for these two.
Yeah, I'll probably do minimal lore for the Oathbound. They are a pivotal part of the story. They have shards in their head, which are the representations of their god in Nersetti. The reason why they have a secret order where each member of the Oathbound, there are 9, either hear no evil, see no evil, or speak no evil. There's only the see no evil, hear no evil. It could be that there's the speak no evil somewhere on the board or maybe in a future card. But I won't go too far into detail about that. The point of the Oathbound are they are very well respected. So if they come out and they say something, or if they mime something, if they're the speak no evil kind, they are very well respected and listened to, and that's the reason why they disgrace any card that they play on. And then anyone, they can play anyone to make people listen to them, and they're immune to the King's Hand because they are the chosen one from God, and that is their ability to do so.
It's fascinating stuff, and again, I just love the design on these cards. One thing I never noticed on the art, and I really appreciate, is the great texture on the back of their collars. So just at the bottom of their collars, they have kind of like a warlock collar. The way it bunches at the back of their neck is really tactile. It's really superbly done.
Yeah, they need that for that tactile functionality. I guess the last thing I'll say without spoiling too much is that the Oathbound are also naturally resistant to how magic is used in the world. And so in order to deliver magic, which we'll see in the next card actually, you have to deliver it via a specific way, either through speaking, having the other person listen, either through touch, or either through sight. And so the people who have no eyes are the ones who are naturally resistant to people who can use their eye power versus the people who use their speaking power. Right. So speaking of people who uses powers, so the Mystic is our next person. Dan, this is a fan favorite for most of our competitors in the tournaments. Do you want to talk a little bit about the Mystic?
Absolutely. So the Mystic gets a lot of discussion during most games. See, the Mystic starts as a 7, highest card we've talked about so far, but it has a very powerful ability. If there are any already disgraced cards in the court, you can then disgrace the Mystic itself after you play it and pick a number between 1 and 8, so meaning all the non-royalty cards. Cards of that value, the number you called out, then lose their card text and have a value of 3 after being played. So what does that mean? It means if I play the Mystic and then evoke its ability, the Mystic gets disgraced, but then let's say I call out the number 5. That means if my opponent has 2 soldiers in their hand, instead of being 5s with a special ability, they stay a 5 for playing it, meaning I can play a soldier on, let's say, an Inquisitor, which is a 4. But once the soldier is played, it's only a 3. So it's only the equivalent of a 3 after it's played, and it has no card text. So I can't guess what's in my opponent's hand. I can't try to boost its power. I can't try to disgrace anything. I get, basically a very boring card as a result of having its power stripped off by the Mystic. And one important thing to note about the Mystic is it can only do this if there's already a disgraced card in the court. So we talked about, for example, the soldier's ability to disgrace other cards in the court if you guessed right. One of the reasons why you want to do that is to set up a Mystic coming down the pipe later to wreak some damage on your opponent's hand. So some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, the Mystic is extremely powerful because she's very flexible and proactive in stopping anything. Heck, she can even stop the assassin if she names the number 2.
So yeah, she's something else. She's got incredible choice in scrunchies. Looks like it would be pretty dangerous to take that out at night to undo her ponytail without cutting her hand up pretty badly, but it looks fierce, that's for sure.
Those are actual shards, which are, again, the power for doing mystic stuff. Her flavor text reads, she speaks and the court is silenced. And it's essentially what she does. As you can guess from what I said earlier, everyone has a way of delivering magic. Her ability is clearly through speaking, as you can see from the wisp emerging from her mouth. In fact, from that inference, you can actually look, there are plenty of cards that have little wisps and they hint at something, but not necessarily, specifically a power that they're trained in. Anyways, point is that she speaks and the court is silenced. She doesn't use her power until things get dirty in the court. When people start being disgraced, when she realizes that order is no longer going to be maintained, she's able to expend her power. However, by doing so, magic is shunned upon in this society, almost to the point of witchcraft or just it's terrible. Like, no one likes magic, and so she disgraces herself in order to use her power because she gets immediately escorted out. But everyone she talks to, or everyone that she's able to say the right words to, lose their power and become useless. And that's the reason why they become a 3. They become weak, they become unable to move, and yeah, I mean, just very powerful character in the lore. In the lore, she actually hails from the Eastern Kingdom and studied magic there, and was shunned away from the king because the old king, the one previous, the one who did the quench and all that stuff, he was scared of her power and learned a lot from her. The new king, however, kept her in her employ. She's still hated by the people, but she's still very powerful and is able to do whatever she wants. The king's trying to get rid of the stigma that magic is used for bad because he thinks it could be used for being better at at solving the world's problems. So,
Right.
anyways, that's her in a nutshell.
Now, Sam, one quick thing. If it did get approved, it will be for your team name with the Z. So as if, Inquisitors, as in your Super Quiz name. So hopefully at some point it gets approved. I'll have to check on that in a second. So that is the Mystic. See, and I just want to point out one thing. Was it intentional that you designed a card game where magic, as in Magic the Gathering perhaps, is scorned and hated?
No, not at all. I love Magic the Gathering. Um, I just thought it was interesting. The Magic system is convoluted and crazy, like everything else that I ever touch, but it's actually quite interesting, and it follows a pattern of delivery and power. So I really like her ability. She mutes people, is what it's called, and so she speaks to them, and she's so good at it. Usually, when someone tries to mute you, you can tell because it's a bunch of gibberish that they're saying towards you. She's gotten good to the point where she can actually make it fit inside a sentence. Like she can talk to you, and then you immediately start feeling all the effects of the power without you even knowing.
That's
So she's one of my favorites. Yeah.
that's interesting. It's kind of vaguely Dune-ish with the weirding way in the
That's right.
voice, if you're familiar with that. Um, all right.
But
Well,
yeah, I mean, you can easily stop it by just having earplugs. I can tell you that much.
all right. Well, hey, let's take a look at the other seven. That's the Warlord right here, giving a sidelong glance, perhaps to us for being big nerds. The Warlord, if there's it normally plays as a normal seven, but if there's royalty in the court, then that seven gets buffed automatically. So instead of it being a seven, it can play as an eight, meaning it can play on anything eight or less. And once it's down, it counts as a nine. So once royalty is face up and out there, the warlord gains a lot of beef and becomes, the muscle commanding the table.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I mean, she doesn't get very much play because the only time you'll ever play her is if people are either using another nine, using one of the other royalty to stop a royalty, or if there's an elder. And it's intentional. I mean, it's really powerful to have a non-royalty nine in the deck. And we saw in the tournament, for example, Juno Balls versus Dancing Pharaohs. He actually had the Warlord in his hand and could have won that round, but didn't realize that the power, since it's so rarely used. But that's the beauty of it, is that if you keep it in your hand, you're rewarded. And so it's one of those cards. When we get into the higher number cards, I'm trying to reward the player for keeping the cards in their hand longer, because otherwise it just turns into war, and whoever has the highest card wins. So you get more power the longer you hold on to a lot of these higher level cards.
That's right. The big numbers don't always win. The big numbers aren't always the best card for the situation. And that's, again, what makes the game so interesting and so well balanced. So, all right.
So
Sorry, go ahead. We have
let
the
me.
lore. That's right.
Oh yeah, no, she's great. She's definitely seen her fair shares of battle. She's really interesting. She is the first tribe that was conquered by Nersetti, so the current king when he went on his rampage across the continent, essentially. The most proud and fierce fighters, but she surrendered almost immediately. Something that's brought up often when she's brought into the council and meetings. People make fun of her for it because she's supposed to be the most powerful, but she gave up so easily. And the reason is because she's actually so smart. She realized there's no way I was going to win and spared her people and integrated pretty quickly to the point where she's now the king's right hand person when it comes to war. She's extremely fierce. Has really well trained soldiers, just not too many. That's the problem. But she's really well respected by the king and others who actually know what she can do. One fun fact about her is that she absolutely hates magicians. Anyone who has any sort of magic ability, she has a lot of problem with, and you will see it potentially in a story. Potentially, there's nothing gameplay wise about it, but she wants people who she respects people who work for what they get rather than have been endowed with something like magic.
Well,
So
that
her ability, just really fast, is just in chaos her influence shine. People look to her as the natural successor to the king, and that's the reason why, as royalty get put into the court and they've been discarded or eldered or whatever, then she is now becoming more powerful and gains more influence.
That's right. That's got to be awkward, by the way, at the when the sevens have lunch, given the fact that the only other seven is someone that she hates and hates the abilities of. That's got to be really, really kind of tendentious when they sit down at the cafeteria or the
Seven.
commissary.
Well, the thing is that they actually are very close to the king, both of them, and the king has to facilitate a relationship between them. She doesn't naturally hate the mystic; she just hates mystics in general. So it's kind of tough for her to reconcile that.
Got it. Okay, so those are the sevens. Four more to go in the deck. And I would agree, Johnny Go. I think that card art is excellent. So there's been a lot of talk on the other cards about the King's
Over
Hand.
here.
Okay, we got to do the comp. So the King's Hand is this beefy fella right here, who himself is immune to the King's Hand because there's two of them in the 3 and 4 player game. And the King's Hand itself, not only is it a beefy, powerful 8, but the King's Hand is also effectively a counterspell card. So if you see that text that says, when another player chooses to use a card's ability, play this card immediately after they choose their target to prevent that ability. Condemn both this card and the played card. So basically, at any point, not even if it's not your turn, or even if it's not your turn, you can play the King's Hand to prevent the opponent from using another card's ability. And then that card and the King's Hand basically leave the game entirely. That's what the condemn ability means. So, for example, if someone uses the Inquisitor and inquisits something that you don't want to play next turn, you can use the King's Hand, and that Inquisitor goes away, its ability never happens, and so does the King's Hand, and the opponent has to play something else. Yeah, same is true for the Assassin, the same is true for the Soldier, or even the Princess, who we'll see later. So there's a lot of power tied up in this card's ability.
Yep. Yeah, I would say it's actually one of the higher skill cap cards as well, because you have to realize if you King's Hand something that's high, for example, let's say it's number 7, they play an 8 and use its ability, and you King's Hand that, not only have you gotten rid of their card and their ability, but now they have to play another card that's higher than a 7. And a lot of people forget that. It's really powerful when it comes to forcing pressure on your opponent. And so your opponent's counter to this is this only works if you choose to use a card's ability. So only if you actually use the card's ability. There's some mandatory things, like, the Elder, for example, that's mandatory. And it also says immune to King's Hand. Or I guess the Elder's not mandatory. Who's mandatory? Let's say the Warlord. The Warlord says if there's any royalty in court, this card gains a +1. So that's not that's not a choice. That's mandatory. So that you can't counter it with the King's Hand. But the Princess, for example, number 9, says you may pick a player. And so if you choose to pick a player, then you got to be careful because the King's Hand can come out and stop her.
That's exactly right. So King's Hand is so important. Picking the right time to use the King's Hand if you have it in your hand is often the deciding factor in whether you lose or you win big or you lose big. So it really is the big important card to have in your hand. And I'm sure there's some good lore behind this card too, eh, Cena?
Nope, I have no lore for this one. It is just a guy with an axe.
Nice. Well,
all right, fine.
No,
I'll
somehow I didn't believe that.
I like his quote, actually, because they actually work together and are independent, which is the first one says to be near him a sense of dread, and to face him certain death. And so the King's Hand is unnatural. It seems to always be with the king. It seems to always be around. It never seems to sleep. And yeah, that's pretty much all I'm willing to talk about him. So.
Oh my! I guess we have to read the last book to really follow
the last
King's
one.
Hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now that tees up the Sentry, the other 8, less ominous but equally powerful. So with the Sentry has the ability to trade. So not only is it a beefy 8, but if you play the Sentry and then disgrace it, you can trade any card in your hand for any non-disgraced card that's not royalty that's on the table. So I play the Sentry, I flip it, then any card that's not a royalty card that's face up on the table, I can trade something in my hand for it, which is kind of like a petite fool. It's a little bit like the Fool's ability, but bound in a tough, robust 8 package.
Yeah, you have to spend 8, and you have to disgrace it, which brings it down to a 1 in order to use its ability, and it's only exchange, and you can't use it on royalty. So it's like a fool with a lot of stipulations.
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, it's really one of those decision points. Do you use it for its powerful 8, or do you use it for its ability?
That's right. So that's the 8 right there. And again, I love the art in this card. Again, Dune-ish. We'll see if Villeneuve's Dune that's coming out later this year cribs off of this card's art. But I noticed one of those magical squiggly lines emanating from her eye. I'm assuming there's a significance to that, eh?
Yeah, maybe. As I suggested, is that lines usually signify power. The Sentry are a group of of members with the royalty, which they're able to basically manipulate others for information. As you see from her art card flavor, she says, forsaking her own, they help see the court they help the court see others anew. So that refers to the fact that you exchange something from someone from your camp with someone in the court and saying that they have something new to say, essentially.
Interesting.
And yes, the squiggle in the eye is perhaps she is using powers from eye contact in order to convey certain things that may or may not actually appear the way that they see.
Or perhaps she's got a false eye, and that's the string to pull it out when she's done for the night.
That's right.
No, okay, so
you nailed it.
there's a lot in the 5th book in the series about the Sentry. So, all right, those are 16 of the 18 cards. Now we get on to the big hammers at the end, the 2 royalty cards, the Princess and the Queen. Let's start with the Princess. So yeah, the Princess is one of the 2 9s. They're both royalty. And the Princess's big ability is that not only is she a 9, but when you play her, you optionally can pick a player and force a card swap, meaning they pick a card and you pick a card and you trade, which again, if you know what's in your opponent's hand, can be a very powerful moment if you time it right.
Yeah, that's we've seen, especially if you go, I want to say first, I can't remember, I think it's maybe second. You have at the end of the game, you'll have the ability to swap with your opponent, and if you don't have an elder in your hand, you can give them something crummy, and they will have to just essentially lose. She is really powerful later on you go in the turn, and yeah, I mean, she's just generally a powerful card, both for being a 9 and for her ability. Especially if someone decides to, let's say, mystic a card in your hand and make it useless. What a great time to give that card back to your opponent and have them trade you something that's useful.
That's right. So yeah, some major power there, and I noticed squiggly lines going all over the place on her card.
Yeah, maybe she has something to do with power. I don't know. I'm just a lowly writer here. But the thing you should notice, actually, Dan, is, well, first off, there are shards connected to her earrings. And then the second part of it is there is representation of both her father and her mother in her art. Can you point out both?
Well, the father would be that triangle insignia on her lapel there. And then
That's
her
right.
mother, I just noticed this, but in her sort of neckerchief on the knot, it has those chevrons, which are the same as that kind of like beetle brooch that the queen has on her card.
That's right. So the leaves around the queen that you see on her neck scarf. And then also the king has the dots, as we mentioned in the Zealot. So the royal family has been associated with these dots that shows the duality of the family. You'll have to get to the, 17th book. I don't know how many books you've pegged me for so far. So
yeah, just as long as you don't pull a George R.R. Martin on us, it'll be all right. Well, that's interesting. So that's a leaf. I thought that was sort of like a beetle or a scarab, but shows what I know.
It's not too far off. I mean, if you look at the queen, who we're going to talk about next, it's a bunch of leaves, but it's shaped in a way that it could have been just like the pin version of that leaf, and so. Yeah, it has to do a little bit with her past, but for the most part, there's not much to say other than the fact that let's start with her abilities first. So she actually changed her ability halfway through the game. She used to be you can't flip your king on her, but that was extremely powerful because she is more powerful than the king, and so. Now what she does is she disgraces all other cards in the court.
Oh, we're talking about the queen now. Sorry, here we go.
Oh yeah, sorry. So the queen is perceived to be the strongest person in the kingdom. So she has expertise in fighting. She has expertise in everything really. She handles the court affairs just like the king does. The king, however, has a very mysterious quest up ahead of him, and she basically handles the kingdom. Very confident. Everyone cowers before her. So if she gets involved, everyone else gets disgraced. So
that's right. Yeah, once she comes out, then everyone else bows before her. Her presence shakes all convictions, and I think that says it all. By the way, thank you, Johnny Go, for checking in tonight. I know you don't need these descriptions of the cards, but I appreciate you stopping by to soak in some lore. And yeah, the Queen's lore is quite interesting. Again, another, I mean, all the cards have impressive art, and this is no exception. You really feel the sort of magisterial command that she has with the folded hands and the shoulders, and just a sense of presence that she has.
Yeah, she's got a ceremonial arrow headpiece, part of her headpiece, which I think is, I mean, it's just like a very funny point out to the fact that she's multifaceted and everything. So yeah,
she's pretty cool.
Yep, as I mentioned, she does everything. She's probably the most powerful member of the kingdom that most people perceive. I keep saying that because there is a lot of magic involved, but she does not have any magic powers, actually. You don't see any squiggles around her, but who knows? I don't know. So yeah, I think that's the 18 cards, right?
That is all 18 of the two-player game. So, we've gone through them all, and commonly if you watch the videos on demand, we refer to the Fool and the Assassin as the specialty cards, and the 7s, 8s, and 9s as the top end, the big bombers at the top end of the deck, and then everyone else is a utility card of some stripe. And then there's one last set of cards to actually look at, which are the two kings. And we talked about in the intro what the kings actually do, but there is one aspect of them we didn't talk about, which is the distinction between the true king and the imposter king. So, Sina, do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, so you start with a king at the beginning of every turn, and you can flip it as your turn to take your successor card and put it into your throne. Put it into your hand. It's kind of like a last-ditch effort. The kings are accused for being imposters because there's 4 of them or 2 of them in the 2-player game, and so if the king comes up and speaks, he's disgracing himself to basically take the successor, his final play, out of his pocket, augment your hand with it, and disgrace whatever's on the throne. So they come out for just a second to disgrace. These clones are identical, except for, as you can see in the art, it says his authority rests upon his identity. And if you go to the true king, the imposter's clone his body, but not his guile. The way this works is that you are playing you're playing out one timeline or one scenario of what could happen. When the king falls in the pool, which is in the prologue of the game, he sees a bunch of different visions, all emanating from the pool, which shows him what his decisions and how each of those decisions, what they play out as. And so we all know that our hero is going to prevail at the end, which is where the true king wins. However, you play as one of those timelines where you actually fight for the throne, and the person who has the true king happens to be the person who chooses who goes first, essentially. And so these are all visions. We're all, all of our lives are predestined, and and what we're doing is we're playing out that timeline. And so every game you play is giving another vision to that king, and he wakes from that stupor of his visions in the pool, wakes up and goes back to the kingdom, confidently thinking he knows what he has to do in order to win against these imposters with a minimal amount of impact to his kingdom.
Right. What I love is, right, within the sort of lore of the game, the successor is the king's decision of who should succeed him, since he himself will not be king, when it's all over. And I think it's amusing because a very commonly successored card is this dude right here. So, the king of Nursetti comes out and says, "But wait, listen to me. I've got your real king here." And then it's this guy goes, "Ah!"
Yeah, the successor is supposed to help him succeed in letting the court know who's the real king and who's not. Not necessarily succeed him as the person to the throne. But I do like the idea of the zealot being like, "I got it, boss." But we all know that what happens actually is a 3-point hand, which means that your true king is the one that's still face up, and they maybe diverted the assassin to assassinate the other imposter king. But who knows? I mean, it's a cheap way for me to be able to create a story where one of those timelines was correct. So I can retcon whatever I want. Perfect.
Well, I love it. It's a terrific game. So those are the cards that are in play for the 2-player edition of Imposter Kings. So in the 3 and 4-player edition, there are different rules, and we're not going to dig into them, but we will briefly talk about the cards because the art is cool for the cards that have complete art. And just to tee it up for the video on demand when we later do talk through the rules for the multiplayer game. So, in the 3 and 4 player games, more of these cards are introduced. There's a second Fool that's introduced in the 4 player game. There's a second Assassin that's introduced in the 4 player game. There's a second Zealot that's introduced. Seen as in the 3 player game or the 4 player of the game that gets the second Zealot?
4 player.
4 player. And then in the 3 player game, one of these guys gets introduced, the Executioner, this very alarming Humpty Dumpty-ish fella here. I'm saying he looks like Humpty Dumpty because it looks like his head cracked like an egg and they didn't do a great job putting it back together. And so the Executioner introduces a lot of the 3 and 4 player strategies that are part and parcel of that game. So again, just to say what he does, Executioner, which is a 4, just like the Inquisitor, you may say any number equal or less than the highest base value card in court. All players must condemn a card in their hand with that base value, which means throw it away as if it were never in your hand in the first place. So the Executioner is a way of pulling cards out of people's hands and out of the game entirely, which, especially in the 4-player game where it's 2v2 and you have a teammate, is a really interesting risk-reward calculation.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing to note is that it says all players must condemn a card. So you can actually use this for your own cards if you have a useless card in your hand, as well as trying to target your opponents. The Executioner is not prejudiced against who he executes. And if you look at his flavor text here, only the quote-unquote guilty meet his acquaintance, and then the second part of it says most only meet him once. He's a pretty mysterious guy. I think in vein of creepiness of the Zealot, he's someone you don't want to mess with. I like the second art because he actually has less needles, which in the bottle's more empty, and he's looking straight at you, which implies that he's maybe used a couple of those needles since the last time you looked at him. And so it's kind of terrifying when you play against him and you see that second one, because you're like, oh shoot, this is not good. But that's basically the gist of it. So I think we could probably get through a couple of these cards real fast and then maybe showcase a game. So the Executioner is like the Inquisitor, except instead of letting your opponent play the card, they get rid of it, but has some restrictions around it. The Royal Guard is like the antithesis to the Assassin here. It says if your king is still face up and there are no more cards in your hand, you immediately win. So King's Guard or Royal Guard is extremely powerful for, comboing with the Oathbound as we talked about, or the Judge even. But it could get King's Hand. So he's only present in the 4-player game. And then 3 and 4 player, but just one of them. And then finally, there's the Warden, who evidence can change with a little loose change. They're the ones who are keeping the face-up card in the game, known as the Accused card, in the accused area. So both players can see that card normally and not interact with it. It's just kind of letting you know, hey, neither player has this card. When you play 3 or 4 player, you get the Warden, which can actually interact with that Accused card. If you have four or more face-up cards in the court, all 7s have a precondition. That's kind of their theme. If there are 4 or more face-up cards in the court, you may exchange any card with your hand with Accused card. So if there's a really good card that's been accused, you can convince the Warden with a couple coins that maybe they should be coming to court and talking.
Interesting.
And maybe someone else got accused.
That's right. And there's one more card, right, which is the Spy.
That's right. The Spy is everyone's favorite card, mostly because I keep nerfing and buffing it like crazy. This one allows you to look at all of your successor cards, so you can see what your opponent's trying to hide away from you. You can then swap a card from your hand with any non-opponent successor card, meaning in two-player, if you choose to use that as a variant, that means your own successor cards, so you can swap something secretly back into your hand. Or your partner in 4-player. If you have a partner, if you're playing the 2v2 version, you can also take your partner's successor card and exchange it with something in your hand. In order to use this ability, you have to disgrace it, however. So that's one thing. It's another powerful 8, but you'd have to get rid of it in order to use its power.
That's right. And so I noticed that's a recent nerf to it. It used to be you could trade with any successor card, including your opponent's. I haven't played with the new version of the Spy, but it'll be interesting to see again the dynamic of team play that could be introduced by that.
There's 2 elements to it. One is that it was too powerful, where the meta was defined around it. There used to be 2 of them too. But then the second part is that I've always wanted the successor to be something that you get to keep. The hidden aspect of it was one part of it, and having someone be able to counterplay. I want people to be able to king's hand it if they need to, but I'm okay with people being able to peek at my card. I just don't want them to be able to act upon it. And so this was kind of the middle ground for it. Still very powerful. I would prefer people use the number more than the ability, and I feel like once people consistently do that, then I would be happy with the card. So
Okay, got it. All right, so those are the new cards introduced in the 3 and 4 player versions of the game. But for the purposes of the tournament and when we really dug in, it's these 18 cards and the 2 kings that are the ones you really need to know, the ones that are on the cheat sheet on the right side of the screen right now. So for the purpose of posterity, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube right now, Cena and I are now going to play a sample game of Imposter Kings. And for those of you who are maybe going into withdrawal after the tournament, yeah, we'll play a game here and get back into action. I know I could use a rep or two, so let's see which of us got that true king. It looks like Cena did. He'll choose who goes first. I'm stuck with the imposter. And now each of us pulls 8 cards off the deck.
it's like the game new.
Oh boy. So we each have our hand. And let me just get this organized here. So for the sake of maintaining some competition, I'm going to jump off of the chat that allows Cena to hear me.
Let me go ahead and just deafen myself. That way you can still hear me.
Perfect. Okay, so Cena's going to go ahead and deafen himself, which he just did. And so, yes, these hands. So notice I got both elders, the Inquisitor, the Judge, the Soldier, the
Turns
Oath...
out I can't, sorry, it turns out I can't actually just deafen myself, so I'm going to move over.
Okay, see it. So both elders, Inquisitor, Judge, Soldier, Oathbound, Warlord, and Mystic. Now, this is not a great hand because of what's missing. I didn't get the Fool or the Assassin. No, the Assassin's the face-up burn card, so neither one of us needs to worry about it. But I also didn't get either of the 8s, and I didn't get either of the royalty cards either. Now, I can guess generally the cards that I didn't get, Cena did get, except for this burn, face-down burn card right here. That's the wild card. That's the one card that I didn't get that Cena didn't get either. Of course, I don't know what it is, and he doesn't either, so we kind of have to play our best accordingly. Now, he rotated his king. That's just a way of telling me that he's going to go first. So with this hand, I've got to think of what's my best possible strategy. So again, remember the meta of the game is it's not just winning versus losing, it's points. You get 1 point for winning a hand, 1 point for winning the hand with your opponent having a card stuck in their hand, and another point for winning without using your king. Now, in the same case, if you have a weak hand, you want to minimize the points your opponents get, even if you maybe can't win it. I don't have a great hand, but I do want to really make him work for this. So I'm going to use these cards as best as I can to try to really make him work. So one thing I do have is I have the Mystic. And remember, the Mystic wipes out cards of any number 1 to 8 if I disgrace it, which means I suspect he has both 8s. So a Mystic levied against those 8s could really weaken his hand, and that's one play I could make. Now, he can also potentially King's Hand that with one of his 8s, but if I play it behind an Oathbound, which is immune to the King's Hand, then I can do things. And Cena is giving me a bit of well, a little bit of trash talk, and frankly, given my hand, I'm having a hard time disagreeing with him on it. I'm just going to go ahead and join him in his other room. Hi, Cena.
Hello?
I noticed you gave me a message there.
What message?
Don't worry, it's on the VOD. It's there forever. Although, frankly, with this hand, I wouldn't...
Oh, really? It's not going so great?
Well, I know you've got certain options available to you. So, anywho, you're going first. Now we have to pick our burn card and our successor card, don't we?
Sure.
So, all right, we're going to do some of that action now. So I'm going to go ahead and burn a card. And I am going to go ahead and successor a card as well.
Test. Oh, I want to see if the in-game chat worked.
All right, what do I want to Successorize. Okay. Okay. All right, Cena, you're going first. Why don't you go ahead and lay one out for me?
What do you think I'm gonna put?
I think you're going to put that exact card, the Inquisitor, out. I'm just curious what you're going to guess.
Do you have the Mystic?
I don't.
Oh, come on, Dan. Come on. You really put it as your successor? Oh my gosh. Don't shrug your shoulders. We all know what's going on here.
Are you watching the stream right now, buddy?
No, I switched off the tab.
All right.
Don't worry, we played enough games that I know how to. Wait, so you did put it as your successor?
No, but
telling me.
I did shrug my shoulders.
Okay. All
right. All right. So here we go. So he missed with his Inquisitor, so it doesn't get to.
Honestly, good heads up play if you did put it as your successor, because that's literally I think your savior here.
All right. Well, I now get to go and do stuff with my turn. So I have a couple of different options that I can do. Again, with that 4 just floating there, doing stuff, being cool. I'm going to play a soldier.
Ooh.
Yeah. You see that? Soldier Boy here is going to guess that you have the King's Hand in your hand.
I do.
So because I guessed correctly, 2 things happen. The soldier is now a 7 and gains +2 for how it's sitting there, and I can disgrace up to 3 cards in the court already. So I'm going to go ahead and disgrace that Inquisitor that's there earlier. So that's now flipped over, and Cena has to play on a 7.
You didn't have to do that.
I didn't have to, but I did.
Well, shucks. I guess this is going to showcase the game, huh, Dan? You're going to beat me even though I had a killer hand? This is sad. All because I missed. I can't believe you put the Mystic down. You're such a professional. I am going to play a standard 8 here.
So beefy 8 hits the table. It's the Sentry. Cena could have used that to trade a card for that soldier that's there face up, but elected not to. So that being out, I am going to flip Philadelphia, my king, which does 2 things.
You have to be careful. I might have the assassin.
No, you don't, because it's sitting right there, face up, where I know you don't have the assassin. In the same way you know that I don't have the assassin. So by flipping the king, I pull my successor card into my hand, and that 8 now gets disgraced, and Cena plays now on a 1.
Oh, cool. This is one opportunity where I can use this Fool, right?
It is an opportunity to use the Fool.
All right, I'll use the Fool, and I get to take any card that's face up back into my hand. So I'll take that soldier.
So Cena plays the Fool and gets that soldier there. So pretty cool. Pretty cool there.
Not the best use of my Fool, but I figure I want the card advantage. So now it's like I'm not going first anymore. It's now like you're going first. You're going to run out of cards before I do.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So now I'm going to play, or now I need to think about what my desired next play is going to be. What do I want that play to be? Oh, what do I want that play to be? So this is interesting. Now I'm coming up with maybe some regrets on the strategy that I have selected, but c'est la vie. I am going to Inquisit. And I am going to Inquisit that you have in your hand right now at this very moment the princess.
Oh, Dan. Should I? No, I don't.
Wait, what?
Don't worry about it. I don't have a princess.
So you were going.
I promise I'm not going to lie.
So you were going to King's Hand me asking if you had the princess, so you didn't have to answer whether you had it or not. Was that the plan?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay.
I
guess I missed.
Yeah, you missed. I'm gonna play this now.
What you gonna do with it, buddy?
Do you have an Elder?
I do.
Wow. It's now a 7, and I don't choose to disgrace anything.
Okay, well, what I'm going to do is, now that that is a 7, I am, let me think through the arithmetic of this game now. So that would leave me with, okay, yeah, okay. Okie dokie. So again, right now, if I look at what's left, so I can look at the cards that have been played to date and start to put together what may or may not have been played, what's still kind of wandering out in the wilderness. So I do know Cena has a King's Hand from my earlier successful soldier guess. He's already played a Sentry, so those are the 2 8s accounted for there. The rest of the cards, well, it's kind of hard to talk about it without revealing what I have to him right now.
Plug my ears if you want.
Just go la 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 la.
I kind of already know what's in your hand, but yeah, just pull me back in.
Okay. So Cena just jumped off chat. So both 8s are accounted for. What about the 9s? I suspect that he has both royalty cards, but I don't know. So thinking about all the cards that are out there, Fool is accounted for, so is the Assassin. I have both Elders. The Zealot is unaccounted for. He likely has that. It hasn't been played. The Inquisitors have both been played. I played... Both Soldiers have been played. I threw away the Judge, so the 5's all been taken care of. He likely has an Oathbound, the other 6. So, again, Zealot, Oathbound, 2 cards he may have. I have both 7s. He has a King's Hand. He's already played the Sentry. So, he has Zealot, and he might have Zealot, might have the Oathbound. He definitely has the King's Hand, and then there are the 2 royalty cards. One of those 5 cards he does not have. Now, earlier, I tried to guess if he had the Princess. He didn't. That means either he never had the Princess, or he has it as his successor. So either is possible. How does that influence my play here? Well, one thought is, do I want to Mystic anything? He has that King's Hand along with potentially 2 royalty cards. Would I want to wipe that 8 and make it a weak card? Well, I might indeed want to do that. So I think I am... But you still have to deal with the 2 royalty cards, an Oathbound and an Elder. I have counterplays for that, along with my Warlord. Okay, let's play. Hi, Cena. Whoop, now wait. Hi, Cena. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yep.
Oh, cool. There's the clock there. Har har. Just teaching people how to play your game here, buddy. All right. So I'm about to play, so you can delete that now. Why didn't you?
It triggers you so much.
why didn't you use that during the tournament?
That's too hard to set up. Trust me.
All right. I'm gonna play the Mystic.
Oh, okay.
And I am going to wipe the 8s.
Wow, that's a big deal. I'm gonna cancel that with my 8.
All right. So they both get condemned, which means they just basically get moved, shuffled away.
Yeah, technically they would be face down because but for other gameplay reasons for 3 and 4 player. But what happens is that we both have a face down card in front of us. It skips your turn. You put your condemned card away. I skips my turn. I put my condemned card away, and it's your turn again.
All right, my turn again.
What's the best way to do it in 2 players? Just pretend like it never happened.
My turn again, eh?
Yeah, sure is.
All right, I am going to just wait. That's currently a 7 on the stack right now.
Oh,
right?
it sure is.
Okay, so
Play that Warlord. Yeah, there we go.
There's the Warlord, which there's no royalty face up, so it's just a 7.
I'll play Queen.
Okay. Queen, once she hits the table, disgraces everything played previously. I'm going to Elder that.
Play an Oathbound.
Okay. I'm going to play my Oathbound on top of your Oathbound.
Oh my god, am I really that bad at this game? Oh no!
And yeah, so well, that's all I got. So
Oh,
you still get 2 points
no,
on
no, no,
me.
no, 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 no.
Oh yeah,
I flipped my king, so
that's
you
right.
get
You
to play
flipped your
whatever you
king.
want.
So
So let me go back. That was really fast. Basically, he played his 6. I decided to flip my king. So flip. When you flip your king, you disgrace whatever's currently on the throne, so it becomes a 1. That allows Dan to play whatever he wants, which is really good for him because now, first off, if I had a 2 or a 1, I would have lost. But second of all, which I don't, I luckily have another 3 right there. But then second of all, there are points in this game. You get 3 points if your king is still face up when you win, which mine is not. I also get an additional point if Dan still had cards in his hand, which he didn't. So now it's just a measly 1-point win, and that's pretty crummy feeling for me because I had such a superior hand, I felt like. So Dan's going to be feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty sad. We all know that what this card is, right?
yeah,
This is
it's
the
the
old princess.
princess. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Unless
what
one of us threw it away.
part of the reason why we were on break so long is I was describing the part of guessing what was in your hand. So I obviously knew that what was left and unaccounted for, and the question was, did you successor the princess or not? Turns out you didn't. So your hand wasn't as much stronger than mine than I anticipated. It also meant that keeping both elders was a mistake on my part. But yeah, with a hand like that, I would feel very good getting away with just a 1-point loss instead of a 2 or 3-point loss.
Not bad, Dan. We saw Mr. Rogers in the tournament in the grand finals get away with a bunch of those 1-point victories, and goes to show. I mean, if you don't have the best cards in your hand, as long as you know how to play them right, you have the right utility, you can bring it down and minimize your losses.
That's right. You know what actually saved you in that hand was playing the fool to get card advantage, because otherwise you might have lost. Like Mr. Rogers is inspired with a couple of his smart plays.
I'm not so sure. I mean, I got a soldier, but I also still had an Oathbound Fool combo, so I could have used that to maybe pick up something a little bit more valuable. Problem was is I had a lot of cards in my hand that disgraced other cards, and so I didn't want to risk it.
Cool. Well,
I
hey,
mean,
that's how Imposter Kings is played. So, in there, as is customary, it must always be finished with a table flip. So
that's right.
there you have it, folks. That's the game. So what we're going to do is we're going to package this video, put it on YouTube, and that way we've got a good reference for all of the 2, 3, and 4-player cards and a good sample hand for a 2-player action. And I'm glad that I didn't get embarrassed in that hand, because that's the one we're going to be pointing to understand how to play this here game. So we're going to put this up on YouTube. Going forward, where can you watch Imposter Kings or get reps in? So a couple of things to talk through. First off, let's go back to, hi Cena, how you doing? Sorry, let me just remove the cheat sheet there. So, right, I feel like I've grown like 2 sizes. I think maybe, I don't know if I zoom the camera or what. So anywho, we every Tuesday night play, Cena and I, at 9 o'clock. So if you want to just watch some, what I would say is reasonably high level play right here on this stream, Tuesday nights is where you want to check in.
More or less goes the same way that it did just right then. So
that's right. Cena wins every hand by 1 point, and it's just a grind to the finish line. No. But this is the place to check in. As well, if you want to play yourself, you can pre-order the game, the paper card version of the game, at imposterkings.com via Gumroad. Or if you want to play Tabletop Simulator Imposter Kings with the burgeoning Imposter Kings community, this is your chance to join the community at tinyurl.com/ikdiscord. And there are all sorts of folks that will happily play with you at any given time if you want to actually try this here game out.
that's right. You can also, on the website, theimposterkings.com, not only do the pre-order, but you can also get the Tabletop Simulator files. So that gives you access to all of the cards in Tabletop Simulator if you have it available, and then you just simply, automatically updates for you and everything. You just simply select it, and it'll get loaded. If you have any questions, however, I highly recommend you join that Discord that Dan just talked about.
So there it is. That's Cena and Dan play the Imposter Kings. It was kind of nice getting back on the horse, Cena. It's kind of nice playing this here game again because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it certainly felt good.
And I did as you, I did successor that Mystic, by the way. I knew you were going to come straight for it. I knew that. I knew you were going to. It's either that or my Elders, and given that the Princess was the burn card, yeah, then the Mystic was it. So I got lucky there.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thanks, Dan, for having me along this journey, and I can't wait to edit this video.
All right, folks. Well, for all of you who
800 timestamps.
Yeah, sorry about that. For all of those of you who checked in tonight, thank you again. Hoping to see you at Tuesdays coming up, or if you're a Super Quiz player, looking forward to seeing you on Thursday night at 7:30 here in Dan Koch Super Quiz. There'll be other Imposter Kings tournaments in the future if you want to get in on that. I'm pretty sure there will be. And yeah, for all of you looking to hit the hay, I wish you a good night. Have yourselves a very good remainder of your Tuesday.